Hello, my name is Zoe Dwyer. This is a video on Year 7 language conventions, specifically focusing on NAPLAN. So just a disclaimer, this content's NAPLAN-like and based on the NAPLAN testing, but as mentioned on the slide, it aims to prepare students for the types of questions on the NAPLAN test, although it is not directly affiliated with NAPLAN tests. A brief overview of NAPLAN testing and this video. The aim of this particular video is to get an idea of all the types of questions on the language convention test that you'll be faced with. For Year 7, the test is 45 minutes long. We'll go over types of questions, as I said, as well as revising specific grammatical concepts. Tips and advice for further practice will also be provided throughout the video. So, section 1, spelling. In spelling, the questions are all relatively similar and well laid out, so we'll only do a couple of these questions and move on. Nearly all spelling questions in NAPLAN are likely to be structured in this way. So, the first question, dog attacks when threatened. Spelling mistakes are circled, write the correct answer in the box. So you know that the incorrectly spelt word is attacks. You can sound that out and give it a go, write it in the box. I went to the hospital for my vaccinations. You can do that. The same thing for the word vaccinations. In this section, it's a little bit different because there's no circle. So we have to find the word and correct it. So I'll just give you an example with the first sentence. The wire fence had to be repaired last Tuesday. With a sentence like this, you're likely to know at least a few words. You'll probably know the word the, had, to, be, maybe last, and maybe Tuesday. I'd say that's a word you might write nearly every week. The other words like wire, fence, or repaired, you might not be as familiar with. In that case, you would go back to those three words, having eliminated the rest or more, and say exactly, sound out how you think the word's spelled. So wire, that sounds right. Fence could be spelled another way, even though it sounds right. And repaired. Now, while you might not have seen this word in its entirety before, you may have seen the word pair. You know that's spelled correctly in this situation, and just re and ed and have been added on to that. So then you can tell that it's just down to these two words, probably this one, just because wire doesn't have another option to be spelt in a different way. So give that strategy a go for the next two questions and for this one. And I know it seems really simple, but it can help when it's more complicated and you don't necessarily know the word straight away. Now I'm just going to flick over to the answer page. So all your answers are in the box here. For the first one, you've got attacks. I hope you sounded that out. So again, although you can't talk in the NAPLAN room, you can kind of sound it out in your head. I'd really recommend practicing that when you don't know how to spell a word. Say it really slowly in your mind and sound it out. You can also do that for vaccinations. Again, it's difficult because they've replaced they've added in an extra S, and S's and C's can be quite difficult to sort out. The next two correct words are fence, spelt with a C rather than an S, mushrooms, double O because of that long oo sound, and classified. And this is another sentence where you can actually use this strategy. The word classified has class in, and you probably know how to spell that word, and then you just can see instantly that class isn't spelt right here, and then you know it's that word. So our first tip, read to practice your spelling, grammar, and punctuation. This is a really, really important tip. If you don't know where to start for NAPLAN practice, read a book. Reading a little or a lot whenever you can will really help you with NAPLAN language conventions. You become a lot more familiar with sentence structure and language quirks and commonalities, as well as your spelling. To go a step further, practice your own writing. Could be a diary, a short story, or a report. Get someone, a teacher, a parent, a friend to read over it for you and to spot your mistakes. Seeing our own errors is one of the best ways to learn. So section 2, Which of the following completes this sentence correctly? The artists often work together, blank, exhibitions. I know that substituting in words can sometimes take a long time, but in this circumstance, it's one of the only things we can do. So substitute in all the options one at a time until you get to one that sounds right. So because of the last word exhibitions, for can't go after together. So the artists often work together for create exhibitions. So if it was for the benefit of exhibitions, it could work, but otherwise with just this word exhibitions after, it does not work. So both this option and this option are out. So let's try the next two options. The artists often work together to create exhibitions. That sounds all right. Let's try the last one as well. The artists often work together to creating exhibitions. Now that's a verb, it can't follow that directly. And you can probably hear that that sounds wrong instantly because it's not a proper sentence structure. So that means that the third option is correct. The artists often work together to create exhibitions. Now I'd recommend you give the last one a go on your own using the same strategy. So which word completes this sentence correctly? Both the sport coach and the maths teacher, blank, required to have a teaching degree. So have a go at substituting those words in now, and then I'll flick over to the answers. So the artists often work together to create exhibitions, so we're right there. And in the second sentence, both the sports coach and the maths teacher are required to have a teaching degree. Sentence punctuation, these are again multiple choice questions. Which sentence contains an apostrophe of possession? Now, instead of reading the answers to you, I'm going to recommend that you read them in your head. It's really, really good practice to get into. But I'll read out the next two questions. Which sentence contains an apostrophe of contraction? And which sentence is punctuated correctly? My next suggestion will be to have a go at these questions before I move on to the answer slide. Have a go now, and then I'll explain what an apostrophe of possession is and the answers. So an apostrophe of possession possesses the word after. So in this case, it will be Abdul's house. This means that it's Abdul's house. So he owns the house. With the other ones, they're actually apostrophes of contraction. An apostrophe of contraction combines two words or contracts them. That's a good way to remember it. So going through these answers, my dad's parents and my grandparents, that's an apostrophe of possession. Sometimes school's too loud for me to concentrate. So a good trick is you should be able to replace the apostrophe S with school, with the word is. So sometimes school is too loud for me to concentrate. That makes sense by itself. So therefore, we can tell that that is the apostrophe of contraction. And that's the correct answer. Which sentence is punctuated correctly? We'll flip back to the non-answered slide for this. To be or not to be, that is the question. There's no full stop there. And I think there should also be a comma in there as well. What 10 things can you do? Now, we all know that there shouldn't be no capital letters in the middle of a sentence or a question, unless it's a proper noun or a noun or specific word that needs a capital letter, a proper noun. So it's not that one. Whose jacket is this? Again, we need an apostrophe here. Dad's last job was at the White House. Now the White House is a proper noun. Those are capitalized. There's an apostrophe here in the correct place. So we know that's the correct answer. Moving on to our second tip. Answer every question. I really want to get this into your minds. If you're lost or confused, it's totally fine. You can skip that question and come back, but you should come back and answer every question, even if it's just a guess. It's a really good habit to get into. If it's multiple choice, you've got a really high chance of getting it right, even if it's a guess. I'm not saying guess every question. I'm just saying guess the ones that you really, really don't know. So moving on to section 4. Again, I'll read the questions. You can read the answers and have a go of the questions by yourselves. Which sentence below contains no adjectives? First question. Second question. Which sentence contains an adverb? Third question. Which two words can be written as a contraction? Have a go at those questions by yourselves now, and then we'll move on. So I'm just going to go over what is an adjective. The basics of an adjective is it's a describing word. You use these in your everyday life all the time. This is just about naming them and realizing that they're there. So for extra practice in knowing what an adjective is, think about what words are adjectives, adverbs, verbs, and nouns in your everyday conversation. An adverb is a word or phrase that modifies or qualifies an adjective, verb, or other adverb or word group, and expresses a relation of place, time, circumstance, manner, cause, or degree. So that's a pretty complicated definition. We'll go over a few examples just to get you more familiar with them. So an adverb is often end in "ly" and change the action. So Zoe waved quickly. It's changing the action. So instead of waving slowly, I'm waving quickly. And that's an adverb. Waving is the verb. So knowing that now, you can probably do the second question. Going back to the adjective question, you want to highlight or underline the adjectives because you're looking for no adjectives. So where you see an adjective, underline it. So I'll take a bath when we get there. I can't see any there for the time being. The adjectives performed incredible stunts. Underline the incredible, that's an adjective, it's describing the stunts. I thought I was seeing double when another Toyota pulled up. So this is a bit of a difficult one because you can't say it's an adjective straight away. But seeing double is actually an adjective because you're describing how you're seeing. And remember, an adjective is a descriptive word. The oily paint stains clothes and tables. So oily is telling you what the paint is. And so there's the adjective there. So it's the first option. And in this one, again, going back to our first description, adjectives also often contain "ly" and act on an adjective or verb or other word group. So the dog gently pawed at the toy. They live in a beautiful mansion. That's an adjective. Baby goats are called kids. That's just a describing sentence. She writes meaningless emails. That's another adjective. So therefore, the adverb has to be this word, gently, and we can fill in the first answer. Which two words can be written as a contraction? We'll flip over to the answer page for this one. Okay, so here it's described a bit. So here it's actually described a bit more simply. We can see that these three are adjectives, as I said before. And we can see that the adverb here is acting on the adjective poured here in green. Which two words can be written as a contraction? Does she, why not, she will, or he could. Now, contraction is, if you don't already know, it's two words that can be contracted using an apostrophe. So does she, you can't put an apostrophe there and make one of those words smaller. Why not, can't do it. She will, you can contract that to she'll as you've got there. He could. You can't contract that. Some other things you can contract are we will, W-E apostrophe double L, and don't, do not. Yeah, they're everywhere in everyday life. It's just about acknowledging they're there, like I said before. So moving on to tip 3, practice makes perfect. Keep trying and practicing, especially questions that you're finding tricky. It's always okay to ask for help from anyone around you, and there are more resources available if you need them. So grammar, multiple choice. Again, have a go at these questions by yourself first, and then I'll move on to an explanation. All right. So for the first question, which sentence contains an example of reported speech? Mum said it would be a good idea to go to the beach on Wednesday. What did you think of the show? Asked Dad. I wish we could go to the park right now. John asked, where are you going to go? Now, this is a tricky one if you don't know what reported speech is. So reported speech, as opposed to direct speech, is speech that is talked about indirectly. So it's not part of the sentence. Once we know this, we can see that speech is a part of this sentence, and this sentence. We've got our quotation marks in the last three sentences. It's not a part of the first sentence. It's being reported by someone. Mum's speech is reported by the speaker. So therefore, the answer is number 1. Which part of the following sentence is the main clause? Because of the roadworks on the tracks, you need to plan for an extra hour of delays if you catch the train into the city today. So the answer, again, is difficult if you don't know what the main or a main clause is. The simple example of a main explanation of what a main clause is a clause that can form a complete sentence when it stands alone. So then here you can just take out each individual part of the sentence, and if it makes sense by itself, that's the answer. Because of the roadworks on the tracks, that doesn't make sense by itself. You need to plan for an extra hour of delays. That could make sense by itself. If you need to catch the train, nope, doesn't make sense by itself. Into the city today, again, doesn't make sense by itself. So because you need to plan for an extra hour of delays makes sense as a standalone sentence, we know that the answer is number 2. So for the last one, which sentence is correct? The paper was collected by Jack and I when our parents asked. Jack and me collected the paper when our parents asked. Our parents asked Jack and I to collect the paper. Our parents asked Jack and me to collect the paper. Now, the difference between me and I is a really tricky one, and I know a lot of people can really struggle with it. A little bit of a trick here is it doesn't actually matter if another person is in the sentence. You'd still refer to yourself the same way as if it was just you. Now, that's a bit hard to explain without examples, so I'll give you a few examples. So if it was the paper was collected by I when our parents asked, that doesn't make sense. It's not how we'd use it. Me collected the paper when our parents asked. Still doesn't make sense. You wouldn't say me collected the paper. Our parents asked I to collect the paper. Again, doesn't make sense. You'd say our parents asked me to collect the paper. So if it's hard to understand with another person, so say Jack and I, you can just take it back to I or me. And most of us know how to use I and me in a sentence because we use it a lot. And from this, we can see that the answer is our parents asked Jack and me to collect the paper. Because if we take Jack and out, our parents asked me to collect the paper is the only one that makes sense. And we can check our answers on the next slide. They're right here. Yeah, we got that one, and that one. All right, so good luck. Best of luck with the NAPLAN tests. Keep working hard and keep practicing. Give it your best shot. Thanks for listening today, and I'll see you next time.